including I think the classroom camera. Okay, so okay, so I just mentioned that we will have 3-hour lectures and lab sessions for the hand-on practice, and also there will be like 2 assignments and 2 quiz, right? During the whole course. Sorry, where is he? Okay, so okay. So the prerequisite for this course, no, because it's for fresh student. I just learned the fundamentals of programming, right? It does not require any of you would have some experience, right? But I will start a survey at the Teams, right? What? Okay, sorry. 1 minute. Okay, sorry for the break. So for learning the programming, it's a subject that requires a lot of practice. So you need to learn by implementing the examples and try to write your own program, not copy paste, right? And find out the errors, find out the debug ways to figure out how to um, let the program work properly, right? So we will have a lot of examples and a lot of trials for you, okay? And of course, we will reappear the errors, right? The errors that most people will come across, and then you will try to learn how to fix those errors. And after some round of those procedures, and you will learn how to avoid those bugs, right? Because it's an old saying that failure teaches success, right? So you do a lot of programming, make a lot of errors, and fix them, and then eventually you will learn how to program in C language, right? So the basic requirement is a lot of late students, right? Okay. Lectures and the labs, right? And of course, if you have the confidence and you have the time, you have the effort, you're encouraged to learn more sophisticated knowledges because there's a lot of available materials on the internet, right? If you need to learn faster than the class, it's okay, right? I can also talk with TAs and me about the things you're learning, okay? So for the assignment, so there's a grading policy. If it's 1 day late for your assignment submission, there will be 20% reduction. 2 day late, 40% reduction, and more time, and then you will lose all the marks. Okay, I have to make the rules very clear before the whole lecture, right? Otherwise, you may come to me again and again to argue for those issues, right? And for individual assignment, you are allowed to discuss with others, but you are not allowed to copy. I'm not allowed to copy. This is plagiarism. I think most of you are fresh student, right? And even high level grade student, you might not be care enough to notice about this plagiarism issue. So I suggest that you just go to check those academic integrity website again and again, right? Try to avoid the things because the consequence will be a disaster if you do a plagiarism, right? So including the cheating on the examinations, right? Unauthorized collaboration, right? You copy the code from internet, right? And of course, or you ask someone else to write the code for you, right? And someone copy another one's code, they replace some keyword, replace some variables. The program still works, but it's still a copy. It's not allowed, right? So there will be punishment, right? there'll be a warning, you will have a very low grading, and even you will fail the course. So try to avoid this. And if you just follow the rules, you just practice by yourself, it's, um, it's very likely you will reach the requirement of the course. So don't worry about that. Okay, it won't be very difficult. Okay, so I think most of you are not from the computing department, right? From the website, I think you are from the civil engineering, right? Okay, so the programming language might be a tools for you, right? You are not just researching into the programming language. So that means that you don't need to learn very sophisticated programming knowledge. Just use it as a tool to help you in your late research, study, and work, right? Okay, so I have started a survey on the teams. Some of you might not bring your computer, right? It's okay. So if you sorry, it's not here. Let me stop. Okay, so here is the survey. If you have take your computers, you can click it. To let me know the basic background of you, right? Online students can do it quickly, right? So it's about, have you learned at least one programming language before joining this class, or do you have any programming experience, right? Let me know if you have any experience. Just raise your hand. No? Okay, none of you have. Okay, you have. Okay, good. So the second thing that I would like to know is that which operating system is on your computer, because you might often use your own computer or laptops to write programs, right? And it's better for me to know your operating system, because it will determine which IDE, which tools that you will use, right? So how many of you are using Windows? Okay, not. Oh, all right. Mac OS. Okay. Uh, why the option is okay? No one replied. So I think people using Linux will be not so much, right? Okay. So I think most of us are still using Windows and Mac OS, right? And then our TA will help you to prepare the development environment in both environments. Okay. So I will continue the lecture. So first of all, before we program, we need to know about the computers, right? Computers nowadays are everywhere. Not only the PC, that the traditional PC, right? Also include your workstation, laptop, even your electronic watch, right? Cell phone, iPad, things like that. Those are all computers, right? Because they have a processor to run the programs, right? Basically, it is defined a device that is capable of performing the two functions, right? First of the computation and then the logical decisions, right? And the computers normally include two major components. First one is called hardware, that we can touch, but we cannot see the details, right? We cannot see the details because the computers nowadays are built in a very high density chips, right? Something we can touch, but we cannot understand. The software is that something that we cannot touch, but we can know the details, right? Because the software are written by the programs, and programs are often in high-level languages that we can understand. Sorry. We can add this, but not answering it. Okay, sorry for the not the actual survey. Okay, sorry for the mistake. Okay, so if you have the answer, okay, you can just type your background. If you have you type yes. If you have the programming experience, you can type your operating system just directly in chat window, right? Okay. But it's fine. In the lab tutorials, we will let you know how to write your C language on your own device. Okay. So the computers include two major components: hardware and the software, right? So the hardware include just like the monitor, keyboard, mouse, speaker, camera, microphone, right? Things like that. And the software is what we are going to learn in this lecture. It's about the programs, right? It's about the programs. Okay, so most of our computers are following the phenomenal architecture, right? It has like 6 basic units, right? The input devices, just like the camera, the keyboard, the mouse, are called the input devices, right? It will sampling the environment, right, and transfer it into the digits, right, and then the computer can understand it, right? And output device like a speaker, right, or a monitor, right? It will transfer the content to something that we can understand, right? Because computers, they are based on the digits. They are calculating the digits. So many, there's massive digits that people cannot understand, right? But for the output devices, we can see the figures, we can hear the voice, right? And the control unit is try to combine those input and output device, and with this ALU, we call it arithmetic logic unit, right? Okay. And there's another essential part is called memory, right? Normally called the random access memory, right? Um, the CPU, called the central process unit, needed to store those digits on somewhere, right? They can either store at the internal memory or the external storage, or we call ROM or hard disk, right? And nowadays it's called solid state disk, right? Okay. The difference between the RAM and ROM is that RAM is very fast. It's much faster than the external storage. But if there's no electricity, right? If you turn off, every data in the RAM will disappear, right? Well, however, the ROM, the external storage devices, will keep those data, right? And if we are writing a program, if we're writing a code, right? Normally we store it. For example, we write a a.c file. We write some programming lines. We store it into external knowledge. But when we run it, when we compile it to a executive file, right? When we double click it, those data will be put into the RAM, and then the CPU will try to execute every line of the program. All right, see the difference? You write something, they stored in the external storage, right? But if you double click it, when it run it, it will load those code from the external to the, sorry. Okay, sounds like there are 2 lectures. Okay. Okay, so I just mentioned the external and internal storage devices, right? Those devices are designed to store the data, right? Or we call it the bits, right? Called the bits, right? Because the computers can only understand 0, 1, right? Understood those bits, right? So how to store the data? How to form a sophisticated structure of those data? It's called the data hierarchy, right? And then the basic unit is called the bits, right? Right. From the logic circuit, sorry, it's called a diode. Diode. If it is it's on, it's called 1. If it's off, it's called 0, right? Okay. So in our computer, there are billions of such diodes try to represent the status of 1 and 0. And if we combine a series of bits, and then you can represent a character, right? Such as a J, right? As a J. And if you combine those different characters, and then it can form a word called Judy, right? And then if we combine those different words, it will form a sentence, right? And different sentence or different called statements, right? A unique name in C language called a statement will have its meaning, right? Both for humans and for computers, right? Okay, so everything in the computer is built on the bits, right? And it is well structured to represent what its meaning. Okay, so a computer program is a collection of instructions, right, that performs a specific task, right, when executed by a computer, right? And usually it's written by a program. And in my when I'm a student, all programs are written by humans. But nowadays AI are trying to write programs. I don't know, but it's a very interesting thing. Okay. Okay. So program is a line of code, or you can call it a sentence or statement, right? People can understand it. People write it, and the computer will translate it to some language that the computer can understand. And programming is trying to write those programs, right? Also known as coding, right? And it can be written in a lot of different languages. In this course, we are learning C language, right? But of course, I think you might heard a lot of like Python, like Java, things like that. Those are different languages which is designed for different purpose, right? For different purpose, right? But C language is I will explain why we learn C language, because it's a very basic language, right? But it has both the characteristics of high-level language and also have the high efficiency that very close to the computer architecture. Right? It can deal with the direct hardware. Right? Some high-level programming languages such as Python, it just call the functions. It just called a library. Right? It abstracts all the hardware details. Right? That's why we are learning the C language to help you to build a fundamental knowledges to learn those languages. Okay. And okay, I'm not sure if you have sorry, why the okay. So have you watched the movie Matrix? Right. It's a very old movie, right? I'm not sure if you have watched it or not. In the movie, even for example, the character it's called the One. He's a section of program, right? Everything is a program, and there's a question: how to identify that if you are a program or not? And the answer is we cannot. We cannot identify if we are program or not. If we, it's like that we actually we cannot judge if we are living in a simulated program, right? Okay, it's just it's not related to the course, just a joke. Okay, so why programming? Why you take the course, right? I think since most of you are not from the computing department, I think you are taking the course because you want to learn program. Try to use the tools for your major usage, right? Try to someday later you will learn how to program to help you to study on your own major directions, right? Knowledges. Right? There's a pioneer in our area, Steve Jobs, the former CEO of Apple. He said that everyone should learn how to code. It teaches you how to think, right? How to think. Because coding or programming is a very direct way for us to understand both the physical world and ourselves, right? Because we are implementing our thoughts on a practical objects in the real world, right? But I have another more practical reasons, right? First of all, you can understand what a computer can do, right? If you click a mouse, right? Click a mouse, and or just use a pencil to write on the screen, you can understand what happened behind it, right? And why the laptops or the MP3 or the music player can give you the sound, give you the music voice, right? And there's also another uh, more practical reason is that if you learn programming, you can uh, easily find a high-paid job, right? Because according to a survey, uh, if you a programming position is the most easy one for you to uh, find a job in industry, and it also can help you a lot, even if you are doing a research, right? Even you're doing research, okay. So this is just some reasons that why you need to learn programming, even not in C, but you have nowadays, if you are a college student, it's strongly advised that you pick at least one programming languages, right, to utilize the power of the computing devices, right? Okay. So write a program. You can tell computers to at least to calculate, right? To some web applications, to a lot of uh, other programs. Those you can easily find in apps, right? If you open your phone, right, you open the App Store, you will find those related apps right in the App Store. Those apps in the App Store, they are programs written uh, by someone, right, by someone, okay? And they all start from this course, the course such as just programming fundamentals, right? And eventually they know how to write those sophisticated applications, okay? All right. So if you need to program, you need to write something that a computer can understand, right? And this is called the programming language, right? And from the history of how people can write the something to let the computer work, right? It has mainly three kind of languages, right? First is called the machine language, that it's only a series of bits, right? It's very difficult for people to program because you not only need to understand the hardware, you also need to understand how to design it, and it's very low efficient. You run a program and another one can barely understand, right? Because it's just a series of bits, right? You need to look up a table, look up a dictionary to know what actually happened, right? But it's in the very old time, it's called the machine language. Computers can directly understand because it's a bits, right? The computers are dealing with bits, right? Are very capable of dealing those bits. And later people invent called assembly language, right? Assembly language is actually a one-one map, right? It tried to translate those machine language to a more readable sentence, right? For example, move this one to this one is like, for example, in the Intel assembly language, is like put the value in this register. Register is a hardware unit that can store some values. Put the value in this register to that one, right? So that, for example, this ECX, the original video is 20, right? And this one original is 19. And if you execute this line, and the register EBX will change to 20, right? So it's more easy to understand. It's called the assembly language. It's a English-like abbreviations, right? Representing the elementary computer operations, right? Okay, move is a very basic data operation. For example, if you double click something, right, you will move the code section from the external storage to the RAM, right, to the memory, right? But that's an analogy. The actual process is not like that way. Okay, so it's and still it's very incomprehensible to computers, right? Computers cannot understand English, right? It needs a translate, right? So this is called assembler, right? Assembler. So assembler is trying to translate those short sentence to the machine language that a computer can understand, right? And at that stage, the large scale programming is still not very efficient because you will need to write a lot of such short sentence to perform a very sophisticated task. So later, people invented the advanced language, right? It's more similar to English, right? Use common mathematical notations. For example, a equals b plus 1 people can directly understand a equals to the value of b plus 1, right? But using the assembly language, it needs several steps, right? So if we can program like that way, right, then people can cooperate with each other more easily, right? So that's why we need the advanced language or the high level languages. But still, the computers they do not understand. Sorry, they do not understand the computers cannot understand such sentence, right? So we need a compiler, a intermediate, a translator, still a translator, but we have another name called compilers to translate those sentences to those digits, right? To those digits, so that the computers can understand what we are doing, right? This is called compilers. And we are learning C language. We are learning C language in this course. So we need a C compiler, right? We need a C compiler. There are a lot of C compilers, different implementations format, but all of them can help you to translate your C language to the bits, to the digital bits that a computer can understand. So this is called the compiler, right? But the actual process is more sophisticated, right? The compiler will scan all the files and find out the functions and link possible address of different files, right? It's very complex. We're not learn the compilers, just learn how to use it. It's okay, all right? So uh, those are the high-level languages, right? High-level languages, right? Normally, it will first translate to the assembly language, right? Assembly language, and then it will use a assembler to transfer to the machine language, right? We are learning the C languages, So for those equations, we can understand directly, right? Human can understand directly, right? But for those assembly languages, oh, some expertise might needed to know what's happening, right? And for those machine language, oh, no one can understand except the computer itself, right? Okay. Um, so from the source code to the machine code, right? Machine code, for example, on the Windows platform, it's called had a name .exe, right? You double click .exe, the Windows will automatically execute the program, right? Those is called the machine code. And source code is a text. Sorry, is a txt file. Is a text file, right? Although it might have a type called .c file, right? But basically it is a text. It's a text that you written in the C language, right? So in this course, you need to understand the connection between writing a program in C and what eventually take place when you run the program. You are not running those text file. You are running those executive file that compiled from the text file that you are written. I understand. So you are writing the text or the C file using the C language, right? And the compiler will transfer those C files into an executive file for your computer. And actually, you are running these programs, not running these txt files. Okay, understand? All right. Any questions so far? No? Any questions from the online audience? Okay. So we will choose C language, right? The reason, first of all, according to this index, is called the Tilby index, right? In the last month, C language is still the most popular around the world, right? If you learn C language, you are the majority one, right? Which means that most of the cases, people are using C language to deal with the uh, programming problem, right? Okay, so that's why this is one of the reason. And second is that C language is a high-level language. A high-level language. Normally, if you are using a high language, you have to transfer like twice, right? Twice transfer to the assembly language and then transfer to the machine language, so that it might be low efficiency, right? Because during the transferring, um, the computer might do a lot of unnecessary things, right? However, C language is a high-level language, but with efficiency, right? Your Linux, right? If you are using phone, both Android and iPhone, the operating system are written in C language, okay? C language, right? Because iPhone are using the I'm not sure. Like Linux are using the Linux kernel, right? Linux kernel are written in C language, right? Uh, I forgot the operating system of iPhone, but they are all written in C language. Some parts, some drivers are written in C++, but C plus and C language is essentially they are the same, but C plus are objective oriented. Okay, so this is another thing. Um, okay, so a lot of other high-level languages they are implemented using C language, right? For example, PHP, Python, right? Python is the second popular language in last month, right? It is implemented using C language, right? And if you are from, I'm not sure if you're using the MATLAB. Maybe later in your study you will use MATLAB. MATLAB is implemented using C language. So C is a fundamental of all other, no, not all, most of other high-level languages. If you learn how to program in C language, then probably you will learn very quickly how to program in other languages. Okay. So the C programming language in this lecture topics, we will learn the basic element of C languages, such as variable. Variable is some unit that can store values, right? Variable. Right? If you have learned the mathematics, variable is for example, is a symbol, right? Symbol. It can be 1, right? It can be 2, right? Those called variables. And also you will learn the keyword of in C language, the grammar, actually, essentially the grammar, right? You are learning a language, you learn a grammar, right? Like you are learning English, you will learn the grammar itself. And the C language is it's very comparable, like you learning English. It's a grammar. You have to follow the grammar, otherwise the compiler will not understand, and then you will give you an error. Okay. And also some advanced features, right? Such as link table, and the preprocessors. Well, those we will put at the end of this lecture. These are not mandatory. These are not mandatory. Okay, and but you are required to write high quality C programs, right? You learn how to debug, right? If you are running some program that uh, sometimes cannot execute, and sometimes have a lot of traps, they will cause harm to computers or to others, right? Others, right? And based on that, you are required to learn how to learn the algorithm. For example, I give you a series of a number. For example, right? You need to reorder from the minimum to the maximum. The series, you need to learn how to solve this problem. This is called algorithm, right? How to rank those numbers. Okay, this is called the algorithm design. And also, you will learn how to the very basic principles of software development. Right? To develop software, it's some knowledges from the software engineering. If you develop large-scale software, so you need to define for example, a coding style. Coding style. You need to let others to easily understand what you are doing, right? And you write the comments or the comments, right? If you write too many codes and without any comments, right? People cannot understand, still cannot understand your idea, right? Okay, these are the topics of the C programming language in these lectures, right? And the content normally includes those parts. In this lecture, we basically talk about overview and some elements of C language, right, such as variables, such as basic operators, for example, summations, right, summations. And in next course, we will introduce the control flow, right, control flow like looping and selection, things like that. And then we will talk about details of the C functions, followed by the data types, right? Advanced data types actually. We will introduce the basic data types in this lecture, like integer, float, double float, things like that. But for the advanced data types such as array and string, we will leave at later lectures. And then we will introduce the pointers. Okay, pointers is actually the location of a variable, right? The location of a variable. For example, if you create a variable in C language like a equals 1, right? How to find a? Right? To find a, you have to know where those variables are stored in your computer, and this is called a pointer. Pointer is basically the address of the variable, Right? We will introduce the details later if you are interested. And then we will learn how to read from the input device or input files and output the things you need to output to the screen or the files, right? And then we will learn the data structure such as a structure, link table, things like that, okay? And then if we still have time, right? Of course, it's also according to your feedback. If I'm going too fast, I will just slow down a little bit. If we have time during this whole lecture, and we will introduce other advanced topics regarding the C languages. Okay. So I think we can have a like 10 to 15 minutes break. Okay. And next lecture we will start to learn this C program. Okay. 哎，我走。点了。哦，我 How about now? Test. Online student, can you hear me? Okay, okay, we will continue. So your first C language is trying to print a line of text to your screen. Okay, so you need this like 16 line of text files can do this job. Okay, so I will explain from the first line to the last line to let you have a very brief idea, right? So first is the comment. Okay, so this one and this one and this one is called a comment. Comment. The comments mean that it's written for the readers, for people. Computers will ignore those lines directly. Right? Computer will just pass this line. Right? If you add or just remove this line, nothing will be changed. Okay. So there are two formations of for commands. Right? First is using two backslash, right? And then the whole line will be a command, right? The computer will ignore this line. The other format of command in C language is like one backslash and a star, right? And then you can write anything here, right? For example, try to let others know so the usage of this program, right? And then use a star and the backslash, right? The whole part is a comments, right? It can include multiple lines, right? You see that the line 3 and the line 4, they are all comments, right? They are all comments. Okay. So the first thing is the comment line, right? It is used for people to understand the details of the program, right? For example, someone may like to add his name, right? The author of the program, he will add at the beginning of the program, right? Hello? And the second one is called the pre-process. Right? You see a line start with a sharp symbol, right? Every line start with a sharp symbol is called a preprocessor, right? The compiler, right? We just introduced the usage of compiler, right? The compiler will transfer your C language to the computer language, right? And the compiler will first do the preprocessor before the actual procedure, right? And this line called include a stdio.h. Actually, this is a file name. This is a file name. This is a file name. It's called the header file. Header file tells this program which library it is going to use. Because if you want to print something on your screen, right, you need to use a library interface. Okay, so the library interface here is called stdio.h, right? The full name is called standard input and output.h. It allows you to utilize the standard input device and output device, which normally are the screen and your keyboard, right? Normally, it can be files, it can be a remote network address, but normally, or most case in our lecture, the io.h, this file, we are using the monitor and the keyboard, okay? So this is called the preprocessor. Most of the C programs will have to include this header file, right? Because you have to deal with the computers, right? Deal with the actual computer devices. You need to use the input, the keyboard or the monitor, right? Okay, okay. This is the second. Element, and you have noticed that there are some blank lines, right? Blank line. I read nothing. Read nothing in this line 11, for example, right? And also I've write some space, right? I've input some space right? Before the printf. So the blank lines, they do not have any usage, but just to let this program to be readable, right? If I delete all these blank lines, it still works, but it's hard for me for you to read, right? So the comments and the blank line or the space, they have no usage for the compiler, but they help you to understand the program, right? To be more readable. Okay, this is the third one. It's called the blank line and the space. Okay, and then we go to this sentence, right? It's called a printf and a function. It's called a function. Okay, it's called a function. And we can see that because our task is print this line, right? So we call this function. We call this function, and this function, if we write something here, if we write something here, and then it will show in your screen, right? Show your screen. But actually, we are not implementing this function, right? This function is a standard library that already implemented by others. Okay, so that's why we need to include this header file to utilize the library already in your computer, right? And then we can directly call this function, right? Okay, this is the usage of the printf, right? The very basic usage, and also you can print a variable, and we will talk about it later. Okay, so in terms of function, a function means that there's a name, right? And those places, these are called the input of the function, right? Input of the function, and these are called the output of the function, right? Remember when you learn mathematics, if you are learning the max, for example, the max function, for example, max 1, 2 equals to 2, right? In mathematics, right? Max 1, 2 equals to 2, right? Or you, sorry, I will have another example. What is sine 90 degree? It's 1, right? No? I think you're from civil engineering. You might know that. Okay. So this sine is called a function, right? 90 degree is the input, and 1 is the output. It's exactly the same in the C programming language. You need to input something for a function, and then you will get some output. But in C language, it is allowed that you input nothing. For example, for the main function, I input nothing, and the return for the output of the function is given by this one, right? Given by this one. So it comes to the very essential component of the C programming language is called the main function. If you click a C program, right? Double click a C program, the computer will automatically start to execute from the main function. You double click a C program, it will jump to this position, right? Every C program will have a main function. Every C program, right? And only one main function. So this is the entry of the program, right? So, and this is called the main function, right? And it's allowed that you will have different input of the main function. It's also allowed that you input nothing for the main function, right? And normally, the function will have a return value, right? Return value, and it's given by normally at the end of the function. So return 0, it means that first of all, the function ends here. If you write something after the return sentence or the return statement, they will not be executed, right? And then this value is just like this one, right? Like this one. Any question? Any question on that? Because a little bit complex. Okay, I will try to explain in details. First of all, is about the comments, right? It can begin with a double backslash. It can also use a multi-line commands, right? Using this format, backslash and a star, right? You can write something in the middle, and then you can use a star and backslash. You can include multiple lines of comments here, right? Okay. So comment not only used to write the, for example, you need to write some explanations for the program. It also can comment some code section that you do not want to use, because the code section in those comment lines, they will not be executed. The compiler will ignore them. For example, you write something, you write some code, you do not want them, right? For example, I do not want this line. I just add a double backslash here, and then this line will not be executed, right? The compiler will ignore this line, right? Okay, this is the usage, right? So the comments document programs, it will improve the program's readability, right? If you write a program, for example, if you are a programmer, right? Someone else need to continue to develop based on your program. He first need to understand what your program are doing, right? And sometimes it's very difficult to read the source code, but with the comments, right? And others can be more easily to understand what you are doing. Right? So this is a comment. Any questions regarding the comments of the C programming language? No, I think it's very simple, right? Okay. And the second one is called the preprocessor. The preprocessor. So the processor means that it will. So here we are using the one of the main kind of the preprocessor called the include, right? Called include. Right? Normally, at the very beginning of a C program, okay. So here we're using the include the standard input and output header file. Right? Header file. It tells the preprocessor to include the contents of the standard input and output header in the program, right? And then when the compiler see this sentence, right, it will try to find this function from this header file, from this library, right? Understand? So if you are not including this line, and then there will be error because the compiler do not know how to printf, right? This is the way to tell the compiler how to print a string on my screen. Okay, we just use the interface. Right? Okay, this is called the preprocessor. There are lots of other header files, right? You can even write your own header files, right? For example, if you have write a, for example, you write a sign function, right? Like a sign function, right? And you can provide to others, right? If someone else need to use your sign function, it need to include your header file, right? See the relationship, right? Header file is a library interface to provide for others, right? And the stdio.h is a standard library provided by the C library, right? The official C library. Okay, you need to include before your C program. Okay. Next is the black lines and the white space. They have no usage, but they just make your program more easy to read, right? The compilers neglect them. Okay. Sorry. So there's a competition called the International C Code Contest, right? trying to write the C language in very different shape, right? You see, this is actually a C program that can work. Actually, can work, right? But it have a a very looks like not a normal program, but it can work. So this is how people use the blank lines to make the program more interesting. Okay, but actually they have of no use of no use. Actually, they are of no use because compiler will ignore those blank lines. Ignore those blank lines. Okay. The most important thing is called the main function. The main function, right? This is the program. This is the program, right? This is the program. And if you double click this program, right? The computer will start to execute from this main function. Every C program has one main function, and the computer will start from this main function, right? From this main function. This is very important. You just remember. Okay, just remember. So main function is a part of every C program, right? The parenthesis after main indicate that the main is a program build block called a function, right? This is a function. Main is a function, right? Okay, main is a function called by you, right? You double click it, you call the main function, right? And the main function can call other functions, okay? And C program may contain one or more functions, right? And the most original one must be main. The initial one, the one executed from the very beginning, is the main function. Okay, so every program in C begins executing the function main, right? Okay, and if you write a C program on your phone, right, you click it, right, you just jump to the main function. That's the logic. Okay, so this one means that, remember here in the main function, before the end of main function, you have a return, right? You have a return. This int means that the type of the return value is called integer, right? Integer is like 0, 1, 2, 3, right? It's a natural integer, okay? Okay, and this is called the main function, right? So you will see that a function is begins with a brace, right? A left brace and right brace. Okay, so this is also called a block. Block. Okay, and this is called the function body. Function body, right? Your computer will start to execute from this line will pass from this directly from this line, right? Call this function printf, right? And the input of this function is called this one. And what will this function do? This function will just put this word to a monitor. And how the printf works, you don't need to worry. Someone else have helped you to implement it. Okay. All right. So this is the main function, right? You double click a file. You double click an executive file. The computer will jump to the entrance of the main function, and start to execute from the first line. The first line. All right. And until the return statement. Right. Also, you see that there's a comma here, right? There's a comma here. For every statement, after statement, you need to add a comma. Means that the sentence ends here, right? Ends here. I'm not sure if you have learned Python. In Python, you don't need a comma here, but for C language, you always need one here. Okay. So we just introduced the main function. Any question? Am I too fast? Should I be a little bit slower? Or it's okay? So if you feel it's a little bit fast, you just raise your hand or just type something in the chat window so I can see it. All right. So I just introduced the, sorry, am I recording? Introduce the main function, right? And actually, yes, the return 0 is optional here, right? Uh, we suggest that you add this line. If you don't have this line, the compiler will just have to give you a warning. It's okay, and the main function will have a default return value, right? But according to the coding rules, you are strongly suggested to add this line. This line is not only to return a value for this function, but also it means that the function ends here, right? After this sentence, you write anything here, doesn't work. The compiler will not execute it. Okay, all right. Okay, so here I just write nothing, right? Nothing here. It equals to I put a void here. Void is one of the data type. Means nothing. Means nothing. I input nothing here. So this sentence is equivalent to this one, right? Okay, and later we will introduce what we can put. What we can put for the main function. What we can input for the main function. And actually, it can be from your command line, right? It can be from a command line. Okay. So the sorry, yeah, the last sentence is called the output statement, right? Output statement is it actually do the job, right? Print the sentence on your screen, right? Present on your screen. Okay. So these are functions that are implemented not by you, implemented by the library, right? It will instruct the computer to perform an action to print on the screen the string of characters, right? Marked by the quotation marks, right? In the quotation marks from this sentence, right? Okay, so here print FF means formatted. Formatted means that we can add something in this string. I will talk to you later. And if you notice that I have something strange here, right? A backslash and n, right? A backslash and then here the backslash means it's called escape character. If I don't have this backslash, and then it will, the screen will print welcome to comp 1011 n, right? And I have a backslash here, means that new line. It means a new line, which means that if you output something, right? You have a cursor, right? If a cursor, the cursor need to go to the new line, right? This is what this backslash n works, the function of slash n, right? Just remember, if you try to print a complete sentence, and then if you want to change a new line for the next output, you need to add a slash n here to let your monitor know that the next time you output from the new line. So I can show you an example. So here, you print welcome, right? And then you call the printf again, welcome to C, right? And then your monitor will show welcome to C. Right? Very natural, right? Because after welcome here, the cursor stay here, and then it will continue to print those sentence. However, if you put those slash n here, and then because from welcome here, it have a slash n, right? And then the cursor will to a new line, and then continue to print the 2. And here there's a new line symbol again, right? Then it will go to a new line again. Understand? Understand? All right. So actually, this is called the escape character, right? And in C language, there are some common escape sequence, right? Such as this is the new line, this is a tab, right? This is alt, and the double backslash in the C program, it's a command, right? Remember, sorry, not command. Command is that way. It's a backslash, means that it's insert a backslash, right? because this block itself is a escape character. We want to print a backslash here, right? The compiler will confused, right? If we want to print a backslash here, we need to put a double backslash. Otherwise, the compiler will misunderstand, right? It will think that if you are using this escape character, he will expecting a N or T or A here, right? Okay, I will show you the code, and in the next lecture I will for you, and you can understand. Okay, so and the quote symbol, because here, if you print something, what if I need to print a quote symbol, right? If I just directly put it here, the printf function will think I just need to print this part, right? But if I need to print the whole sentence, I need to it's more intuitive if I just show you the code and run it. Okay, I will do it later. Okay, so I just mentioned if you add a new line symbol here, and then the cursor, right, your monitor will start a new line, right? Otherwise, it will stay at that line. Okay, otherwise it will stay at that line. Okay, so these are just is your first C program, right? It's very simple. Just let you to print something on your monitor, right? What if you want to do more sophisticated things? For example, you need to do a basic summation, right? Try to add one number with another one, find the result, right? So before that, we need to introduce the variables, right? So the variables, because one purpose of the program trying to do mathematics, right? Mathematical calculations, right? And some calculations need the intermediate steps, which means we need some place to store that value. The value will be changed later, but we need a space to store those values, right? Okay, so this is called a variable. Variable is actually a storage space in your computer. It can store the values. Those values can be changed by you or by the computer or by anything. Okay, this is called variables. Okay, how do we store those intermediate values in programming? We are using the variables. Okay, it's very similar to the mathematical terms variables, right? In mathematical, we have a variable a, right? A, we can initialize it a as 0, right? And a can equals to a plus 6. What will happen? A equal to 6, right? It's a very simple mathematic calculation. It's exactly the same in C language, and a here is called a variable. And you can name anything you want. You can name A, B, right? But these are some rule of it, right? So again, variable is an area in memory, right? In memory, where values can be stored, right? It's like a box that can store something. Though something is a number. It can be a digital number. It can be a character, right? So, and this is called the data type, right? You are storing something, some value, some data, and the data may have some types, right? You can have an integer, like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? You can have a symbol or characters like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, like the percentage or the question marks, right? And also you can have a floating point number like 3.14, right? This is called the floating number, right? And we have a exclusive name for it. Integer, the keyword is called int, right? Characteristics or symbols is called a char. Floating numbers, we use a double, okay? Or use float. Okay, but nowadays people are using double. Okay, so before we use a variable, for example, a, right? We need to declare it. Declare means that you declare a variable. The compiler will allocate a space from the memory to store this variable. Understand? So here, int. So this line int integer 1, right? The compiler will translate this sentence, right? This sentence to let the computer know that I have a variable called the integer 1. This is the variable name, right? Just like the a, just like this a, right? I have a name called integer 1, and the computer will find a space in the memory to store the value. And in the initialize, it can be a random value, right? It can be a random value, but also you can initialize it by yourself. For example, integer 1, sorry, equals to 0, right? If you write this way, you initialize this integer to 0. Otherwise, it either be a random value or either be a 0 value. Okay, it's normally a random value. It's according to different platforms. Okay, so these three sentences, they just declare or claim three variables called integer 1, integer 2, and the integer sum. Right? You can see that I'm going to try to find out the summation of these two integers, right? Okay. So this is one way of declaration, right? But you see that those are all integers. Right? You write three lines. It may be too complex. I can just use a one line to declare those three variables, right? Use the comma to separate them, right? So integer 1 and integer 2, this line equals to these two lines. Okay, this line, they equals to these two lines. They are equal. Okay, so basically they are the same. The compiler will think they are the same. Okay, you can choose whatever you would like to use. Okay, so I mean that you can have your own variable name, right? But there's a rule. You cannot name whatever you want, right? First of all, the name can be a series of characters, right? Including letters, digits, and underscores, right? However, there should be no space, right? Because if you have a B, right, that's okay. If A space B, right, the compiler will think that you have two variables, right? No space allowed, okay? So this is one rule. And the variable cannot begin with numbers, right? If you are given a variable name called 0a, right? 0a, the compiler will give you an error information, said it is not allowed, right? And also, the variable name are case sensitive, which means that A1 and the capital A, they are two different variables. They are two different variables, right? In Windows, sometimes you will see that they are not case sensitive, right? But in C program language, the capital symbol and the normal symbol, they are different, all right? So some is a coding style. The variable should begin with lowercase letters, but it's okay to use capital symbol, but it's not recommended, right? It's not. It's a coding style. There will be not error. There will be no error, but in order to let people to better understand your code, right? It's not recommended. Okay, so this is called the variable. Okay, variable is a symbol. You can understand the symbol that can change its value, and it is stored at somewhere at the computer. Okay. So, and also there's another rule that your variable cannot use the name of the keyword in your C program, right? Cannot use the keyword of C program, right? So these are the keywords, right? They cannot be used the name of your variable, right? So later I will introduce one keyword called size of. A lot of people will think size of is a function, and actually it's not. It's a keyword. Okay. So you cannot have a variable name called long. It's not allowed because it's a keyword. Okay. So the variable name, right? We just introduced the rules of how to name a variable, right? These names, and actually they correspond to a location in your computer's memory, and we call it the address, right? The address. So this is a hexadecimal order, right? If you are 32 bits platform, and normally nowadays people have 64 bits, right? And for every address, they have eight. They have eight bits, right? Every address they have 8 bits. Okay, so if you name a variable, the name corresponding to the location, right? For example, you have int a, right? Int will use 4 bytes, and then this a corresponding to the address of this one, right? And if you are using the a, for example, a plus 1 something, right? The computer will find this a value from this address, right? Okay, so every variable have its name, right? We have taught the name, and type. Type means it's an integer, or it's a double floating value, or it's a character, right? And the size means that, for example, integer will have 4 bytes, character will have 1 byte. Okay, these are different size. Value. So this one, if you have um, if you have finished your program, they cannot be changed. But the value, they can be changed. That's why it's called the variable. Okay, it's called the variable. Its value can be changed. All right. So when the new value placed into the variable, so the previous value will be override, right? So it's also called the destructive writing, right? So the older value will be replaced. But if you read a variable, for example, I print the value, right? Print the value. Then the value of a will not be changed. But it's very easy to understand, right? If you learn from basic mathematics. Okay. Any questions so far? Any questions from the online audience? No? Okay, then I will continue. So we just introduced the printf. Try to output something on your monitor, right? And how to capture the values on your keyboard, right? Capture what character from the keyboard. This is called a function called scanf, right? Scanf. So this sentence will read an integer from your keyboard. Okay. It of course you need to include the standard header file, right? Standard header, because the keyboard is one of the standard input device, and then it has 2 arguments, right? Two arguments. See here, this one is called the format, and this one is called the address of the variable. Remember that here, a actually means a location of a variable where it is stored, right? Right, where it is stored. At, for example, at a actually means, this address. Okay, at a address, and at integer 1 means that this is address of the integer 1, the variable. And this sentence will scan your keyboard. Whatever you input, it will put the value, it will give the value to the integer. Understand? Okay. Okay, the first one is called the format control, means that whatever your input, I will translate those input to the type of integer. Right? I input 12, and then I know it's 12. I input 12.1, then I will still transfer into a integer. Right? The computer do not know. You have to specify the type. Okay, I will show a program later, and you will know. Okay, and all right. So D means decimal. Decimal means it can be an integer, right? It can be also a double integer, right? The percentage symbol, right? It's try to specify the format of your input, right? And the at integer is address of this variable, and will give your input, right? You input something, right? For some 12, this function will transfer whatever you input to a int type, and then give the value of this int type to the integer, right? Okay, it's the inverse process, like comparing with printf. Okay, all right, understand? Okay, so this slide introduce the this is called the at, right? The at. We not the official pronunciation, I don't know, but we call it at. At means at some variable. This is a variable. This one gives the address or the location of in the memory to store that variable, right? Okay. So when combined with the variable name, so tells this scanf function the location in memory at where the integer is stored, right? Okay. So and then the computer will store the value from your keyboard to this integer, right? Okay. So and later when we learn the pointer, a very important concept in C language, right? And at at something actually give the pointer of that variable, right? The point of a variable actually is equivalent to address of a variable. Okay. So it's difficult to talk, right? And then it's easy to show the code, and which I will do it in later. So we can scan two different variables, and then find out the summation of them, right? And then we can directly use this statement, right? Remember, okay, I forgot to say, every sentence, right? Complete sentence in C language is called a statement, right? So if it's very intuitive, right? I scan two values for these variables, and then I find out the summation of them, right? And find out the summation of them. So here's the operator. Plus is called operator. This equal is also called an operator. This means that the compiler will add these two variables, and then the result will be given to this variable, right? And actually, it's very simple, right? It's just mathematics, right? So here we have two integers, two operators. This equal operator and the plus operator, right? Okay. So then, as soon as we have the sum, the summation, the variable, right? And then we can print it out, so that we can do a basic task to add two variables, right? Add two variables. Okay. So actually, you can directly write this way. This way. You do not need a sum variable because the value of a sentence or a statement equals to the summation, right? You see, this is a statement actually, or called a sentence. This also have a value, right? Its value equals to the summation of these two, right? It's very subtle because intuitively it's very you can understand it quickly, but the program the computer does not understand, right? The program have to specify clearly that this is a sentence, right? This is a sentence. It is a two variable combined with an operator, right? This sentence, the value of this sentence equals to the result of this operation, right? Okay, so so you can treat the whole thing as a new variable that temporarily stored at the computer. The compiler will create a temporary variable for you, right? For you, all right? Okay, so here we just claimed or declared two integers, right? Integer 1 and integer 2. And normally, okay, and also a sum variable. Normally, they are stored as somewhere in the memory, right? And the memory entered by you or by the keyboard will be given by these two integers, right? And then you will calculate the summation of it using this plus operator, and then you will print out the summation of these two integers, right? It's not difficult. So I will continue. Okay, so this is a summation, and um, as soon as you give the value to integer 1 and integer 2, right? And from this sentence, right? Because integer 1 and integer 2, they are at the right side of a equal operator. So the value of integer 1 and integer 2 will not be changed after this sentence, right? The only variable changed is the one at the left side. Okay, the left side. Okay, this is very intuitive. Okay, so we may introduce the integer type of variable, right? And there are also other data types, right? For example, character is called a char, right? Char. For example, if you declare a character variable, you can like char C, right? Char C, and you can give it a symbol, for example, C, right? C, right? And note that a symbol, a character variable, you need a quotation, a single quotation symbol to specify it, right? Remember that we printf here, we printf or scanf, we use a quotation, right? Full quotation symbol. Here, a char, a character data type, you use a single quotation symbol. Okay, there. And integer, right? And then char actually it maps to the ASCII code, right? Including the a lot of most symbols that we use daily in daily life, and they will to occupy the 1 byte, which is 8 bits, right? So how many possible characters for the char type? So it's 2 power 8, right? Okay, and for the integer, it's a natural integer, right? Integer type. Normally it will have 4 bytes, and in current most platform it will have 4 bytes. So there will be sorry, those two, right? Because the 4 bytes, right? And we will have 32 bits, right? And we will have float, double, and short, long, unsigned, and signed, right? Okay, I will specifically introduce signed and unsigned, right? For example, for the default of integer is signed. Default of integer, it is signed int. Int equals to signed int, which means that it can have some minus value to positive value, right? Unsigned means that it will start from 0 to some value. Okay. Okay. So there are two different types. So the numeric data types, we have two, right? Integers and floating point values, right? Integers we will have short integer will have occupy 2 bytes, right? 2 bytes. In integer, normal integer will have 4 bytes, and the long integer will have 8 bytes. So why we use different size for those types? It's because in the older days, the storage devices or the memory space is limited. So we have to carefully plan the usage of all variables, right? So sometimes we use short integers, sometimes we use long integers, okay? And however, in the mathematicals, we not only use the integers, we also use the floating point values, for example, 8.1, 3.14, things like that, okay? So float and the double, currently, I think they are 8 bytes, right? And then I will introduce how to find the data size of each type later, okay? So I think long will have 16 or even more. It's according to the different definition for different platforms, okay? So these are the, I think, okay, these are the, I will repeat it again. So different data types, okay? Char is 1 byte or 8 bits, right? Every char character will maps to an ASCII code, right? This is a unified code for every symbol, right? And but of course, the computer, they cannot recognize those characters. It can also only install the binary number, the bits, right? So those maps, they are made by human being. They're made by human being. So actually, you can think it is a mapping rule. It's a mapping rule. If you have a 8 bits variable, right? Any variable, 8 bits variable, you can treat it as a character, and then you can find out its actual what is the actual character. Okay, so if you want to print a character, you need to, because remember that we print we are using the D formation, right? D formation A, right? Here, if we using if we need to print a character, like print out those symbols, right? Those symbols, and then we need to use this formation, right? Here, if we want to print this C, right? We need print C, so that the screen will show H, right? Otherwise, if we print D formation, it will not show H. Instead, it will show a number that equals to the ASCII code of that character. Understand? So those symbol is made. This is a rule made by human being, not by the computer. Computer cannot understand the character. Okay. So print the value in ASCII code. You use the D formation. Okay. And the integer data type, we have already introduced it. All right. Normally it occupied 4 bytes, right? And the default integer type is signed type, which means that it will have minus value. The range will from this one. Actually, it's 2 to -1. I think so, right? So almost half is for the minus value, half for the positive value, and 1 for the 0 value. Okay. So if you use unsigned, then it will start from 0 to, right, -1. Okay. So you will have all the possible numbers, right? And the other are called the float or double, and you can check by yourself, right? If you want to print a float, a double, right? You need, if you want to print something of the double type, you need to specify the exactly type. Otherwise, the value will not, the value showed on your monitor will not be exactly the one you see in the program. Okay, I will show you later. Okay, there are some like short, long, or long double things mainly determines the actual storage space that a variable will use, right? The short usually use 2 bytes, right? Long use 8 bytes, long double use 16 bytes, right? And you can have a very quick calculation to find out the range, right? The range of this value, right? If you have a result that larger than that one, and then it will overflow, right? Overflow means that the result is not correct, right? Not correct. You need to be very careful to, for example, you add a very large value to another very large value, then if the results are larger than those results, and then you will not have, you have a wrong answer, all right? Because the answer overflow. The storage cannot store such large value, and that time you need to convert the integer to a more to a data type that that can use more space. All right. Okay. So I forgot to introduce the void. Right. Remember that we have mentioned int main. Right. The main function, it equals to int main void. Right. Void. Void means that it's nothing. I input nothing here. Right. It's equals to that one. And also in the main function, this student just suggests that the return condition, the sentence can be ignored, right? It's okay. And if you do not include this return value here, the functions will stop at this at the end of the main function, right? And then the return value will be a default one, However, sorry, if I use a void main void, okay, I input nothing and I output nothing, then which means that the function returns can be void, right? And function arguments can be void, right? And also later when we introduce to pointers, the pointer can point to a void variable. Void, it has nothing, but it's still it's a variable. It's a variable. Okay. So, but actually there's nothing, just a terminology. Okay. So actually we can find out the, remember that we are using short, long, long double, right? To define the type of different variables, right? And it determines how many bits, how many bytes that a variable can use, right? So, but sometimes we are confused because different platforms may have different standards. So we can use a keyword called size of to find out the actual size of an integer, right? Note that size of is not a function. It's not a function. It's a keyword. For example, here we can use size of, for example, my char, right? It equals to, you can ignore the bracelet, size of my char. Okay, those two sentences, they are the same, right? Because size of is not a function, it's a keyword, right? So this bracelet is not necessary here, but of course you can add here to make the code more readable, correct? So here it's about the data range. The data range mainly determines on the bytes of a variable, right? The bytes of variable. For example, short means it will occupy 2 bytes, right? 2 bytes means 16 bits, right? So default short will have included negative values. So the range will be sorry, 2, right? Because you have a 0 inside, right? You have a 0 inside. And if you have unsigned short, you will have all, 16. 16 minus 1, right? Okay, following the same principle, you will find out the range of any data type, right? It determines on 2 factors. First is how many bytes are used for that variable. The second one is if it is signed or unsigned, right? Okay. And also it will have the it will have the real number, like the float or the just transfer those range to decimal range, right? You can use a calculator to do by yourself, all right? Okay, so we have talked about the operators of plus, right? Operator plus, and also there are some common operators such as plus, minus, multiply, division, remainder, right? Remainder, okay. So I will introduce one by one, okay? So plus, minus, and multiply or division, they are very common in mathematics, right? And remainder is very special. It tries to find the remainder after a division, right? For example, if A equals to 7, B equals to 4, right? A divided by B equals to 7 divided by 4, right? And we can calculate by ourselves. It equals to 1.75, right? Well, the C program will give the result as 1. It will ignore the remaining part, and those parts will be here. It's called the remainder of the operator. Okay, for example, 7 remainder 4, it equals, because 3, right? Okay, so this is called the remainder operator. Okay, I think you can understand it very quickly, right? Okay, but it can be only used with the integer operators, right? Because 1.6 point, right? This one, the compiler will think they are the divided by 2 floating values. They divided by each other, so it will equals to 0, 0.0, 2.0, right? 2.0. However, if you divide 7.0, what will happen? Right? In mathematically, it will go to infinity, right? And then if you do this in the C program, some compiler will give you an error. Some will just report a running time error, which double click the program, and then the program will report a fatal error and terminate the program immediately, right? Okay, this is if you divide something by 0, right? Because we know that mathematically it's not feasible, right? Okay, any questions so far? No? So am I over time? Let me see. So how about we have a break? A break? Okay. Hello. deductive like it's not a combination, deductive combination. It's a for the OC is equals to OCGN to remind the computer the end of string. So you cannot directly combine them. Also show the Oh, sorry. Then how about now? Can you give me feedback from online student? Okay, thank you. Sorry for it again. So the first line we need to include the preprocessor, right? We need to include the standard input and output header file, right? To use the library, right? And then we start at the main function, right? The main function you can currently we use no input, right? No input. You don't click the program, right? Or if I click run, the computer will start to execute from the main function, right? And then I can here. This is actually I can start here, but I will leave a blank line, and then here use a tab to make the code more readable, right? And then I will like print f. Sorry. Use the quotation symbol, right? Welcome to, right? Remember that we need to use escape escape character and n to start a new line, right? I will show you. So is that okay? So normally because we have specified that the main function should return an integer, right? So here we will return an integer. We can return either 0 or either 1. There's no difference. It's according to your definition. You can return anything you want, right? So here we have just finished the writing of the first very simple C program. Okay, so and actually I can add a comment here. I can return any value, right? It's all okay. Then I run. So you will see. Welcome to come 10 here. First of all, it's print normally, right? And then normally what means that it's an error code, right? If I return 0, so if you're running a code, it's a rule, it's a normal rule, it's a common rule. It's not mandatory. It's not mandatory, right? So this error this is not actual error. This is just to tell. For example, if I click my program, if I return 0, means that the program wants to tell me the program runs okay. If I return 0, if I return 1, means that I want to remind me the program reminded me that there's something wrong with the program. It's by myself. It's okay. Okay. So if I return 0, then there will be no such error, right? No such error. It's irrelevant. Okay. You can ignore that. Okay. This is our first program line. So if you have a laptop, you can try to type. Remember, to type the program from the first line to the last line. Do not copy and paste. Otherwise, you will never learn. You will never learn. It will be difficult for you to learn. You only need to type from the first character to the last one, right? Because you will have a lot of mistakes when you type by yourself, right? If you copy and paste, copy the example and paste, you will never find out what you will make a mistake when you actually do it by yourself, all right? So this is the first one. So let me show you how this new line character works, okay? So here, I will add another line, right? Second line, second sentence, right? Second sentence here. So I click run, and then what will happen? Okay, the second sentence will start at the second line, right? The second line. But if we remove this one, and we run, what will happen? The second sentence will be printed right behind this sentence, right? See, the second sentence appeared here, which means that most of the time we need a new line symbol to let the following printer to be more readable, right? Okay, this is introduced how, and then we also introduce the tab, right? So what will happen? This one will come to here, and then there will be a tab, a blank space, right? And we can have a scene, right? I suggest you utilize those online, you see there, here is a tab symbol, right? Tab symbol normally equals to 4 space, right? The range equals to 4 space. So I strongly suggest that you utilize those online compilers. They will save you a lot of time. So back to the time I learned C language, like 17 years ago, there's no such things, and I have to install a lot of, tools myself, and they were not that convenient at that time, at least. Okay. So next, I think it's about the integer, right? The integer, the variables. So here we declare 2 integers. Integer 1, right? Integer 2. And then we need to print the value of these 2 integers, right? Integer, sorry. The 1 is, so we don't know the value, right? Integer 1, okay. So since integer 1 and integer 2, they are very similar, so I copy the line. Okay, so here I declare integer, but I did not initialize it. So what the value will it be? What the value to be? It depends on the platform. The default initialized value depends on platform, right? Depends on platform. Maybe in your computer it will be a random value. Maybe here it will be 0, right? Here, let me try. Oh, here it just initialized to 0, right? And of course, I initialize it to 100. Sorry, or to minus 20. Okay, so if I run the program, then they have been initialized to 100 and minus 20, right? Okay, I can manually initialize by myself, right? So I forgot to say, when I click run here, it actually have 2 steps. First step is to compile this C program to a executive file, and then second is to run this file and to output the things at the right window. Okay, so in the tutorial you will know the whole detailed procedure, but here I just show you the directly the input and output, right, to simplify the things. Okay, so here integer we have initialized 2 integers, right? 2 integers. How to calculate the summation? Sorry, I will calculate the summation of 2 integers, right? So here, summation equals to 1 plus integer 2, right? Very simple, very simple. So here, I will have to add another printf function. I will call the printf function again, right? Sum of integer 1 and integer 2 is, so don't forget to add a new line escaper, and then it is sum, right? So very intuitive and simple, right? Right? You can try yourself on the website, right? If you type all the program, you will find a lot of errors, right? If you find errors, you can either send information to me or you just Google your error, and then most of the time Google tells you where is the error, right? But if you cannot figure it out by yourself, you can ask me or ask TA, right? Okay. So if I run, so you can see. Sorry, see, there's a mistake, right? What's the mistake? Integer 2. Oh, sorry, there's if you, okay, sorry, there shouldn't be no R here, right? Integer. So see, if you type the code by yourself, there's always some mistake, right? Right? Okay. So integer 1 is 100, integer 2 is minus 20, and the summation is 80, right? Okay, very quickly. And then there's we've introduced a scanf function. Remember scanf? So what if I do not want to use this code? I just like I can comment it. So you see, I use this comment method. So everything within this part will be ignored. They will be commented, which means they are invalid anymore. The compiler will ignore them. Okay. So here, even I initialize this integer, right? I would like to read the value from my keyboard, right? But this online tools is a little bit different. You see here is stdin in, right? It is standard input. So I put my standard input here actually. So scanf. So here standard input .h, right? In your computer, on your device, it's a keyboard. In this website, it's here. It's here, right? I can scan F. Remember, this should follow the address or the location of integer 1, right? Okay, so then I put it 12 here. Oh, default without this sentence, right? Sorry, I will leave it. I will let them work again. So if I don't have this sentence, right? I comment it. So I run it. You can see that integer is 100, right? But if I add this line, right, which will scan the standard input here, right? You see this is standard input to this value, right? If I put 12 here, run. See, integer 1 will become. Sorry, it's a mistake. Oh, here, integer. I always add a r here, so I run. So here integer 1 become 12, but because this sentence will scan the standard input, a value, transfer it to a digital, integer type, and then give the value to integer 1, right? So that integer 1 will become a new value 12. And then the summation, okay, here, the summation is using the old value, right? Using the older value, right? Older value. So still, the summation is 80. Right? However, if I put the summation sentence here, right, then the result will be changed, right? You can see that it's 12 and minus 20, and then the integer of minus 1, integer 1, the summation of integer 1 and integer 2 is minus 8, right? Okay, so in your lab session or when you try by yourself, when the program runs to this sentence, to this statement, to this sentence, right, to this line, the command window will block there until you type something and type enter. Right? It's different when using the online tools, but it's okay. And actually, it can scan multiple values, right? If I use a space and 23, and then the integer 2 here, this line will scan the second input from the standard input to this integer 2, right? And then we can calculate the value of the sum of these two, right? Okay, and this is called the whole program to give you the result, the summation of two input here, right? And of course I can choose anyone, right? I can give you any input, integer input, of course, right? It will show you, right? It will show you. Okay, this is a very simple program, right? If you can use this online website to run this program by yourself, and then it will be a very good start for you. Very good start for you, right? There's a lot of mistake, a lot of error reported if you try to normally try to type this program by yourself. Okay, remember to type the code by yourself, and then you will learn much quickly than just copy and paste. So I think I have to let you go at 11:15, right? Because today the second lecture is a little bit of overtime. So next time I will try to control the pace. Okay. So if you have any questions, I think class is over now. Okay. Any questions? Any questions from the online audience? Okay. You can send me email, send TA emails. The contact method are on the slides. And then okay, today's class is over. Thank you.